Hello everybody, Brian Hussar here. I'm going to do a review and talk about the new 4K Ultra High Definition UHD disc of Robert Zemeckis' 1994 Oscar-winning epic Forrest Gump. Now you know the movie, you've seen it, you know the Gumpism, life is like a box of chocolates, Jenny. And you know the Oscars that year where we were battling between Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump, even though there shouldn't have been a battle brewing. Both of them are brilliant films. You know how people tried to make political tales out of Forrest Gump, and if it's political, if it's not political. Alright, bottom line is, Forrest Gump, the movie, because the book's another matter. Eric Roth and Robert Zemeckis found the heart of the book to make a successful film. The Blu-ray edition in here is the version that originally came out in 2010 for Paramount's Sapphire collection of Blu-rays. This was like supposed to be the Rolls Royce of Blu-rays at the time. And a couple things about the 4K UHD. It's in Dolby Vision, and the sound was done in Dolby Atmos, so Dolby Vision HDR. This is a case now on 4K, because I just started to get 4K. I just got a 4K player for Father's Day. So I'm making the conversion of 4K, but I'm doing it on a title-by-title basis, because not every title needs to be on 4K UHD. A 4K transfer done for Blu-ray is perfectly fine, and if you have a 4K player, it will automatically up-res it. It's a title-by-title basis. Criterion doesn't need to do 4K UHD, which a couple people are complaining that Criterion hasn't done that. So this is a case where HDR, which stands for High Dynamic Range, and in this case the HDR was Dolby Vision, should be used sparingly or sometimes not used at all. It's a perfectly good transfer. The aging Blu-ray disc is slightly better because sometimes the HDR makes the image too dark or can make it too bright, but it's still a pretty good transfer for what it is. I was more impressed with having it in Dolby Atmos, even though Forrest Gump as a movie is surprisingly predominantly front heavy. Not too much happening in the rear channels. During the Vietnam battle there is some stuff that's happening in the rear channels, and during the hurricane sequence there's some things happening in the rear channels. Just some light ambiance. Primarily everything is front heavy, happening in the front. So the immersive Dolby Atmos audio, I think it was a plus because it was able to have it be a bit more immersive. But this is still a pretty good transfer. If you have a 4K player, it's worth the upgrade. I would just be cautious with the HDR. In fact, the High Dynamic Range, I would urge a lot of studios doing 4K UHD discs. Some movies do not need HDR. Some movies don't need to come out on 4K UHD discs. I think The Godfather Blu-ray is perfectly fine. Did it need HDR applied to it? That's a question, and I'm not too sure I have the answer on this, because I like what I'm seeing, but confused by some scenes as well. So that's my opinion on the transfer of the new 4K UHD disc. But man, Forrest Gump still works. It's still a classic. I still get choked up at the end, and I still think at the end of the film, the character of Forrest is smarter than everybody else in the film. And so much has been written about the Jenny character that I think people have gotten her totally wrong, especially when she finally sleeps with Forrest and then she leaves Forrest. She thought Forrest was too good for her, and she didn't want to drag Forrest down her path. But I like the bit of irony. I like the sort of, you know, the winking at history the film actually does, which is what it is. It's a nice nod to history, and this simple character is sort of taking you through a little slanted version of history, a really ironic version of history. Forrest Gump versus Pulp Fiction, they are both equally valid in my opinion, for different reasons, and they're both classics. Forrest Gump as a film still holds up, still a classic. The 4K UHD disc is really good. If you have the Blu-ray still, you don't need to rush out and get the 4K unless you want the upgraded Dolby Atmos sound. But that's my take on this Forrest Gump 4K UHD disc. And until we meet again.